Good evening, and welcome to our Wednesday night session. I'll start with the Lord's Prayer in the Aramaic tongue, and then we'll dive into tonight's subject. أوند وشميانة قداش شماخ تأتي ملكوتاخ نهوي سوينخ إكند وشميا أبرآ حولا لحمة سنقانا يومنا واشوق لان حوبين إكند داب حنان شوق لحيوين لا تعلن لنسيونا إلا قصا من بيشة مثل ولدي لاخي ملكوثة حي لو تشبحته العالم عالمين Amen. Well, I've been talking about peace, and I threw a lot of concepts at you the last two times I spoke in relation to Jesus's peace and what sets him apart from what we define today as peace and peace in general. When people reach peace treaties and so forth, end of wars, nations tend to sign peace treaties. The winner and the loser, sometimes they come into a point where they're both can't sustain war, and they sign peace treaties. And usually those treaties, the way we think of them, is just a phase. We don't try to build on them to create permanent peace. And that's why I really wanted to talk about peace, is because the Jesus peace is about permanent peace, not about temporary peace. And our history is littered with those examples. The most recent one probably, and one of those great opportunities that we missed, and right now we're paying a price for it, is when we had the two superpowers, the US and the Soviet Union at the time, and they started. We fatigued each other. We destroyed. We built up our weapons to a point where we couldn't fight a war because it would have been totally destructive to everybody. And then we. Oh, sorry, I want to make sure people can hear me. Okay, I have verses. So we built up our weapons, and then we realized that the weapons are now useless because we can't use them against each other. We continued to have scrimmages using third parties to test out our weapons and our military strategies. But at one point, a couple wise men of their time decided, okay, let's stop this madness and let's start working on dismantling the weapons, and let's dismantle even the idea of these superpowers. And that the Soviet Union took the steps. The German Berlin Wall fell, was a moment in time for some of us who have been around, and it seemed like the world started thinking, oh, we're turning the page. We're finally getting the idea. But as I said, we took that moment and instead of building on it to create permanent peace, and globalization came soon after, which is another form of ended up being another form of war and so forth. And we did not get to that to sit down and say, okay, how can we truly leverage this moment? And we built up NATO. They dismantled their military alliances. That I'm talking about the Russians. At the time, we got all these new countries spread around Europe, some civil wars because there were boiling feelings that had been suppressed. And we still worked through a lot of these things. It's expected. We were changing the world. And then we ended up in the same spot. We ended up where we built up, we continued to think that building military and getting closer to the enemy's borders, or what we defined, they were not acting as enemies, but we continued to have this divided world. So why? What is it? And then Jesus saw that we cannot, for some reason, we could not sustain the peace. We have peace by oppression, and he was living under peace by oppression. And that's why it was constantly bubbling, especially in Galilee, in his area. You could just see these young men who were fed up, young men probably, and women and families who were fed up and oppressed by the Romans and the temple system, the taxation system. And they would just lift up their arms, carry weapons, and go after their enemies. And they would be suppressed and oppressed and destroyed. I mean, they killed them, and then wait a few more months, few more years, and another group of people, because the Romans were not setting up a peaceful system, and neither were that throughout the history of the Jewish people. They played the same game. So if you read their prophets very carefully, they're constantly talking about how they lost their way. We have a period of goodness and prosperity, and maybe it comes on the heels of defeating an enemy, because that's when we feel the most secure. It's like there is nobody attacking us right now. The fact is, there are people who are watching, and they're bigger people, and nations that are going through the same cycles, and they end up attacking. And then you go through the same cycle. You get oppressed, you build your power, maybe you come back. And some nations never came back. Some nations came back. Today we're living with the same exact area where Jesus grew up. Same methodology. People who were oppressed in Europe and all around the world are now acting with power against people who they're supposed to take care of. And the people who are oppressed, and I do not by any meaning, and I have never supported Hamas and their ideology, but the other people who were oppressed by Hamas are now double oppressed by the same mentalities, because there's two oppressive mentalities, two people who want to rule by force, two people who want to rule by their religion, their belief system, their ideology, not people who are thinking globally and how to bring peace to that region. So why? And then we look at Jesus. So I want to go to Jesus, and he was constantly walking around warning about these things. He was saying, you have to live in both worlds. But he hit a point, and this is soon after he entered Jerusalem. So we always around Easter time, we talk about his triumphant entry into Jerusalem and so forth. If you continue reading, right after the Hosanna, there were, his people, the Galileans saw him come in humbled on a donkey, and he wasn't coming to fight. He was coming on a donkey. He wasn't coming on a white horse with a sword and a crown. He came to basically try to wake them up again. So we're going before him, and coming after him, we're shouting and saying, Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is he who come in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest. Okay, so they felt like they're finally, their message of peace and love and the kingdom of God is coming to Jerusalem, because Jerusalem was the religious center for the people. And Jesus had to go at some point of his ministry, he had to go confront the leaders of his religion, because they had shook hands and were collaborating with the Romans and oppressing their people. And right after that, when he entered Jerusalem, I'm reading in Matthew chapter 21, verse, I read 9 and now 10. When he entered Jerusalem, the whole city was stirred up, and they were saying, who is this man? So he wasn't really known by the Judeans, by the people who lived in Jerusalem, because his ministry was mainly in northern Palestine, in Galilee. He wandered where we would call it today, like to the borders of Lebanon, 10 cities which kind of go around the lake of Tiberias, or the Sea of Galilee, which is now a part of like Jordan and Syria. So if you've traveled there, it's that northern part. That was his territory. That's where he mainly established his ministry and his movement. But he knew that for this movement to take the next step, Jerusalem had to go, had to join in, and that's why he went to Jerusalem. And he took his whole entourage, the apostles and the disciples, and they were all coming with him on a pilgrimage to celebrate the feast. So who is this man? And the people were saying, this is the prophet Jesus from Nazareth in Galilee. So they were introducing him, the people who knew him. And Jesus entered into the temple. So he immediately went into the temple of God, and drove out. See, this is what I wanted to get to. Drove out all who were buying and selling in the temple. And he overturned the trays of money of the money changers and the stands of those who sold doves. And he said to them, it is written, my house shall be called the house of prayer, but you have made it a bandit's cave. And in the temple, they brought to him the blind and the lame, and he healed them. So two verses in today's Bible. What made Jesus, the one who's constantly talk about peace, go and act out against the people who were doing that? That's sometimes as a peace minister, you have to speak out. We see that throughout the Bible. We see that throughout history. I'm not saying you have to be violent, and I don't think Jesus hurt anybody in the process. We did not hear that he grabbed a sword or hit one of those traders on the head with a stone or a stick or anything like that. So he physically did not attack anybody. He still respected humanity. He still respected the human beings. But he saw how the system was converting religion, the religious center, the house of God. And now Jesus comes from a prophet, the prophet's tradition. He did not like the idea of the temple. He did not like the idea of centering religion. He knew that God is everywhere. I just opened with the Lord's Prayer. Awund washmaya, the one who's everywhere. That's the true meaning of our Father who's in heaven. That to the people who speak, heaven is everywhere. And let your will be done on earth as it is on heaven. So it's everywhere. So Jesus is talking, yes, okay, I'm going to the temple like everybody does. It is the center of the religion. But even the center of the religion, you had converted it into a place of cheating people, doing business. You could do it just outside. And we see that today. Go to any center of religion, and I challenge you not to find a gift shop and a business that thrives on people, dressing you specifically the way that religion requires, covering your head, charging you to even enter it. We have lost our way. Our religion has lost its way as well. And I'm talking about that. I don't think there is an exception to that. Whether you go to the temples in Asia, or the mosques in the Near East, or the churches in Europe, and vice versa across the whole world, that the leadership that's supposed to be bringing peace is now focused on money. It's focused on membership. It's focused on all the things or a lot of the things that Jesus spoke against, that the prophets spoke against. So here's Jesus now losing his cool, but it's in line with his message about peace. He said, my peace is going to come to divide, because there is true peace and there is worldly peace. And here he's demonstrating true peace. It's not peace that's done in the businesses that are sitting outside the temple, taking advantage of people. That has no place in the kingdom of God. That has to stop. And for a long time, the early movement of Jesus didn't have the things that we have today. And I said it before, and I think Dr. Eriko said it before. If things do make you comfortable, sometimes we create little shrines in our home with incense and so forth that help us center in today's crazy world. So be it. But these people were almost becoming. I mean, the traders were just purely cheating there, because people came and they needed to change the money from their local currency to the temple money to be able to tithe and buy the sacrificial animals. And there's another thing, sacrificial animals. All the prophets were against it. It was still being practiced at the time of Jesus. He didn't want that either. He wanted us to get along. He wanted us to love one another. What's the first thing that when after this moment of what seems like madness from him, but it wasn't madness. It was very well calculated and probably an emotional Eastern man seeing what they're doing in the house of God. And I've seen that. I've seen that many times when people misbehave in spiritual places in the Near East. As I was growing up, I've been yelled at. I've seen people getting yelled at, not me. I was in the audience. Because somebody will stand, an elder man or woman, often would tell people to behave and respect the place. Jesus was acting in a way that is expected. So, but he wanted to change the way people behave, especially in the spiritual places, but in their everyday interaction. He talked about the traders prior to that. How that because they used to cheat when they sold cloth, and it we have not changed that. So what is the next phase? How can we get there? Are we ever going to get there, or do we trust Jesus in saying, you know what, that the worldly systems will always exist and the worldly systems are always going to be bad? Do we just watch them do what they do? Or do we try and by your actions? Jesus said, it's not by your belief system, it's by your actions you will bring the kingdom of God. So do we go, when an opportunity shows up in front of us to turn the tables? I'm never going to say that it's okay to hurt a person, but is it okay to do these things like Jesus did when we see something wrong being done? I would say absolutely. Now, that might put you, like it did with Jesus, in harm's way. So you have to be very careful. As I said, Jesus was coming towards the end of his ministry. He taught peace, he taught love, he taught the apostles how to heal, he taught them how to travel safely and get to places and where to stay and what to do when people close the door and don't want to deal with you. And he went into nitty-gritty. And I know his ministry was fairly short, but in whatever 3 to 5 years that he actually did this, he gave us everything, because he had reflected on it and read the prophets and studied and watched the peacemakers in his town. So he took 30 some years of experience, and in 3 to 5 years, he gave us basically the whole formula of how to change the world. And now he was coming to Jerusalem to basically knock on the last door, the center of Rome in the Holy Land, and the center of the Jewish religion globally at that point. That was the temple. And he was saying, you need to join the kingdom of God. You need to change the way, and I'm taking a risk. And that's why after that, he had his moment after leaving. He had his moment where he knew, God, if I did the right thing, I hope that it sticks and I survive it. And unfortunately, when they came for him, he did not survive it. They used the other system on him. They used the worldly system. They caught him on terminology. And he was challenged there because he, as I said, he did not spend a lot of time in Judea, and they spoke slightly different dialect. And when you're talking about theology and debating religion, if you're not speaking the same language, you'll get in trouble quickly. I mean, and look at us, and religion especially. How many sects do we have today within every religion? We splinter very easily because we use this, not this. And I'm not talking about the heart as a, it's our soul. We don't use our soul in trying to build bridges. That's the risk. That's the peace that Jesus was wanting to bring. Use your soul. Look at the other person as yourself. Treat them as yourself. Love them as yourself. And the ones who are misbehaving and acting like enemies across from you, give them a little bit of leeway. Turn them around by loving them. And we, as I said, we constantly, every day that moment presents itself, the opportunity is there. When we see hungry people, we can choose to go and fight to give them food. Fight as in, like, call your congressman, call your church, stand in the middle of the church, say, I don't feel right about what's going on. Anywhere, I'm talking about the Ukraine, I'm talking about Sudan, I'm talking about the small battles that we rarely hear about in Asia. There is so much. I told you a few months ago, I displayed some websites that about, their entities and websites that track these conflicts. And I don't want you to dwell in it. Okay, so as a peacemaker, your first influence needs to be in your community. And when your community is stable and you feel that peace, then expand a little bit and expand a little bit. If you have passion towards these things, and make sure you do your homework. So, because the other thing that I've seen is people get, just like Jesus said, sometimes they hear this and some of the seeds land on the rock, and some seeds on the side of the road, and some sprout quickly and then they die, they get scorched, and some take hold. So if peace is something that you care about, and you want to find a cause for to bring peace to the world and peace to your community, there are plenty of opportunities. But that peace, we need, next time you have that opportunity, the reason I started by talking about like what happened with the US and the Soviet Union back in the 80s is that if you even study, the prophets did a little bit, differently than Jesus did. Micah, Isaiah, all the prophets at some point had a glimmer of what true peace for Israel and for the world is going to be. And they wanted Israel to be, or the Jewish people to be the beacon of light. That's also part of why Jesus talks about, when you have the light, you can't hide it. It destroys darkness. So he gave us all these things. When we have the light, we should destroy the darkness, not by fighting it, but by changing it, by shedding light on the wrong that takes place. And we shouldn't feel helpless. That's part of being involved in this type of work and this type of thinking and this type of living, is sometimes you just feel like you're pushing a mountain. And that's why I'm saying pick what you're passionate about and figure out how you can make the change in the world, and then start taking action. And it could be as simple as phone calls, it could be as simple as emails, it could be as simple as a few dollars if you have a couple extra bucks to help somebody. But ultimately, we should not be standing today, 2,000 years after we learned this lesson, and not doing much about it. So and that's why I'm always talking about action, whether it's peace, whether it's love, whether it's forgiveness. And Jesus was always about action. He didn't tell the guy who had a quarrel with his brother and he was tithing at the temple, go back to your seat and pray about it. He said, leave your tithe, get the heck out of here, go make up with your brother, then come back. That's action. That's not thought. That's not inaction. He always wanted people to take this message. This is a message of being, a message of living, a message of loving. And that's the power of his teachings. So I'm coming into a half an hour, and the the glimmer that I wanted, which I've read you before, I could read it in other prophets, but in the prophet Micah had knew the next step that we did not take. In when you know, or that we do not take. Every time there is peace, we do not take that next step, which is dismantling your military. I told you before, that I had the blessing last year of visiting Costa Rica. I think it's the only country in the world that does not have an army. Since World War II, when they saw the destruction and death that happened in the world, they decided as a country, they voted to dismantle their army. And here they are, they're a country with borders and Costa Ricans, not you know, they have people that come from different parts of the world. A lot of Americans go there to retire and live there. But they live without an army. They rely on the global legal system. So when a neighboring country came and took some of their gold, they dug under into their reserve of gold. They sued them, and they got them to pay back what they did and damages, etc. But they didn't have to declare war. If they had an army, believe me, that would have been a battle. They would have shot at them when they saw them digging, and it would have been rockets back and forth, and a whole bunch of people died. Here, they just paid a bunch of lawyers, sued them, and got their money back. And that happens constantly. They have immigrants that come through illegally, but their target is not to stay in Costa Rica. They bust them over. They don't arrest them. They don't put them in cages. They don't abuse them and beat them up and send them back to where they came from, which they're escaping persecution. Hey, you're on a journey and you don't want to stay in my country? I'll put you on a bus and I'll take you to the next border. Good luck. That's so Costa. I wish, like, we don't hear about these things until I had to go visit it. Maybe some of you are more aware of this. Here I am, 50 some years old, and I've been studying geography and global conflicts and so forth my whole life. I thought I did, and I didn't know about the system they have. Why aren't we replicating that? Why do we continue to go left and right and elect people who want to go this way or people who want to go that way? Why can't we be in the middle? You don't argue with Costa Ricans over military and left and right. But Costa Ricans have health care instead of military. They took the money and put every Costa Rican can go through college supported by the government. Think about the trillions, the hundreds of billions that we put into military budget. We hear about, we just in the US we did, all over the world. What all these treaties, all the countries that are joining peace treaties, what is the reward? What is the first thing they commit to typically? A military alliance, approval to order a whole bunch of weapons. And then some of them are getting into the business of weapons immediately because now they're a part of an alliance that needs bullets and rockets and so forth. They're building those facilities instead of peace. They're joining a peace treaty and they are going and building up their military presence. What the heck are we thinking? So I am. If you can't tell how worked up I am, but this has to go out. This has to be shared. This has to be told to people because we also, I don't feel helpless. I'm just frustrated that we are not doing better after all this time. And it's upon us to continue to bring in the message of the kingdom, the message of love. There is a place for it and it heals. The thing about it is it heals. Now we will go into a period of maybe reconciliation or trying to repair some of the damage that we did. But over time and over generations and centuries, the healing takes place. The people will start intermarrying. The people will start working together, buying from each other's businesses. And we see that in a lot of places that used to be a part of the Ottoman Empire or a part of Yugoslavia or a part, they form new alliances within themselves because they're neighbors and they need to live with one another. So I suspect that it's just a matter of time, but we can accelerate that by continuing to bring in that message of peace. And I was talking about the prophets. You have to dismantle your military. You have to accept that not all people are going to believe the same way. I mean, these are the prophets of Yahweh saying each man will pray to their God and we will pray to our God. See, today we want to create conflict based on religion. It sells like hot potatoes when you tell people of one religion that these people are threatening your God. It's the same. Typically, it's the same God, at least in the three major religions in the world. And in Buddhism, there's been a lot of conflict within Buddhism. So love, forgive, and do what you can do to bring in peace. And tell the person next to you on the bus, tell the person next to you at church, we should do something about this. We shouldn't just sit and watch the world burn and especially when we sit in our churches, it breaks my heart that our ministers are not out there saying these things. So I see some comments coming in the chat session. We usually don't look at the chat session because we can't download it. It kind of disappears. So if you have a question, please put it in the Q&A. That's my message today. And if you want to read Micah's prophecy, his vision for peace, go read that chapter 4 and read actually the whole book because it talks about how for him as a prophet, he was watching his nation. Israel, they had split. The Jewish people had split into two kingdoms. And he saw three different kings, three different systems came in his lifetime, and he could see the decay in his community. That's why we end up where we end up. We let little things add up. And we've done this, and then there's a reset button at some point that nobody likes. That reset button is very, very painful for the people who are living during that time. Most of us spend their lifespans not experiencing this, depending on where you're living. But even in the hottest conflict areas, there has been periods of peace long enough for people to live and die during that period and not really experience the pain that the next generation experienced or the generation prior did. So that's part of our wisdom is how can we stretch that so all the generations can experience this peace. That's why I feel it's important for us to actually act. And sometimes you might have to talk to your minister, you might have to talk to your congressman or congresswoman about what they're doing incorrectly. Flip their table, it's okay. And metaphorically speaking, don't go up to in the church and drop something, but speak to them. Make sure that they understand you're not okay with them reading Paul and talking about the blood of Jesus or talking about something, a religion that is not Jesus's message in a church, and you use it to just have fluff stuff. Let's talk about the real things. Let's talk about the real teachings. Let's read Matthew 5. Let's read Matthew 3 and 4 and 6. That's where Jesus lives, and that's where we need to get the world to live with us there. So I'm going to look at okay, the questions are coming in. Verses on 1 John 5, 7 through 8. And it's not a question, but I'm guessing this is in the epistles. The second epistle of John, third epistle of John. Okay, first epistle of John. 5, 7, and 8. I'll go ahead and read those. So this is the last chapter, and the Spirit testifies that very Spirit is the truth, and there are three to bear witness: the Spirit and the water and the blood, and these three are one. Is there is the question because of communism? That's why we have a military both, but were in World War. I'll read it first. Yeah. So the person is, why do we have that the military buildup and communism? I'm not a proponent of communism, um, and I don't think any world system is really capable of giving us the peace that we need. So they needed Jesus too, and they oppressed. I'm talking about the Soviet Union. They oppressed religion. Their basic philosophy was anti-religion, and they really went after Christians, Muslims, Jews, and anybody that was within them was totally oppressed, and they wanted no God in the picture. Um, so I'm not saying that they were good, but we can, as I said, it was a moment where we had a chance where they let go and we could have let go, and the world started letting go globally. We saw the European Union being born from that, and all the borders in Europe opened up. You join the union, your borders are open. People can go around, move around, ship products, live, intermarry. As I said, see, this is where the nations start disappearing and the humanity takes place. When we don't do that and we continue to support border systems and so forth. And I know a lot of people died in World War II, and a lot of people died after that. And when they were trying to kind of settle down what the world was going to look like. And out of that was born Costa Rica, as well as Israel, as well as the whole other countries. Became Yugoslavia, and then that fell apart. Czech Republic, Czechoslovakia, that fell apart. So as I said, we always have a reset button, and that reset button for the area, what happened in Yugoslavia after that war, was very, very painful for the people who were living at that time in Yugoslavia, and some of them are still healing today, trying to heal today, and very suspicious of their neighbors. But at least they're neighbors now. They're playing soccer against each other. They're not shooting at each other. They're visiting the next country and going as tourists and staying in a hotel and drinking and eating and swimming in their waters. Those are all steps towards peace. Now, because we're very suspicious and because we're constantly building and rebuilding the military, anything could happen. And sometimes some areas, some of the civilized countries like England and France used to fight constantly. Well, they haven't had a war in a long time, but they fight their wars somewhere else. And they need to, at some point, to help those other places mature enough so we don't go through that again. Micah 4:5, perfect example, say more on it. That's basically the prophet said that at some point, and he warns about a time where everything, where the mountain that the temple is on will become a forest, meaning that the mountain is going to be destroyed. The Jerusalem and Samaria, the two capitals of the two Jewish kingdoms at the time, that they'll be desolate, they'll be turned into fields. That mentality is the same mentality that we see today in southern Lebanon. That's the same mentality we see in Syria. That's the same mentality we see in Gaza. Okay, they're plowing the land as if nobody lives on it, as nobody owns it. Okay, this is the strong over the weak. And before Israel started this war in that region, people were doing it before them too, including Palestinian against Palestinian. That's why I'm saying there is no political system out there that is actually kind to its people and is going to make their people better. We in America suffer from similar things, depending on which government is ruling, which side is ruling. Sometimes they're nicer to their side of the fence than the other side. As I said, we need some people who are in the middle, who love both, and then promote peace and love, and then extend it beyond your borders. That's why I said the prophet Micah had that vision of letting people believe the way they want to believe, practice the religion the way they want to practice it. And don't force your religion, your belief system, your way on them. We just passed a law in Texas that the Ten Commandments, which are not Jesus, that's Moses. So even the Christians today are confused. Why didn't Texas put the Beatitudes in every classroom? Why every kid walking in saying, "Blessed are the peacemakers"? Why aren't we seeing that? Why are we seeing kill and I'm the only God and don't covet your neighbor's wife and what? Jesus didn't, I mean, he said that those things were good to get us to me, but now that I'm here, Jesus, talking about Jesus, here are the rules of the game. Don't covet. No, there is no envy. If your eye offends you, you're better off plucking it than letting it take you to hell. Because Moses went to, try to get you out of hell. Jesus tried to keep you from entering hell, just like his Lord's Prayer says. And do not let us enter into temptation. Help us out. Temptation is always around us. Our brains are fast. There is a lot of noise in our ears and heads, and there are a lot of things that are in front of our eyes. Do not let us enter into temptation. So give me the power to shut the computer down when a bad thing shows up, to turn the TV off or switch the channel when something bad is taking me to a place I shouldn't go. That's Jesus. Why isn't that what the kids in Texas are seeing in their classrooms? Christianity lost its way. That's why don't bring people to listen to me. Bring them to listen to the message of Jesus. Bring them to listen to the message of the prophets. That's what we're speaking about here. And that's why we go back to the Aramaic, because there are subtleties here that are misused by a lot of religion too, a lot of religious authority. So we hope to give you a full picture. That's why I have no problem going into the Hebrew Bible or into Paul and Revelation. I've done those as well. But ultimately, the truth is in Jesus, and some of it is in the prophets because they do fluctuate. Their loyalty, Jesus managed to overcome his loyalty to his people. He wanted to open it up. He said the family will suffer, the tribe will suffer, my blood line will suffer because they have to all be destroyed for humanity to be one. So he wasn't being exclusive, he was being all-inclusive. Just like he said in Matthew 5, be all-inclusive, be perfect, like God is, who loves everybody. That's Jesus. And that's the power of this message. So with that, I'm going to close. I don't see any more questions. I appreciate you spending your time with me. I appreciate you. There is one more thing that came. We appreciate your donations that keep us going, and keep telling people about these messages and live them above all. I hope they bring you peace, and they help you deal with the frustration when you do experience frustration, because you have a way of quieting down, of forgiving, of letting go, of loving. All these feelings are good for you. They'll give you a long life. They'll give you good health. And that we are designed for that. And I'm going to close with that. I'm going to take the questions for next time. So thank you so much. Have a lovely rest of your Wednesday, wherever you are. And next week, Dr. Erica will be with you. Take care.